So I want to talk to you about, of course, Blessed Karl. And now in our difficult time, we need to look at the example of Blessed Karl. It's very important. All his life was inspired by his deep love and devotion to God and the Sacred Heart of Jesus. My grandmother told me that his love for the Sacred Heart of Jesus was so strong that he always had a picture with him of the Sacred Heart of Jesus on his desk, or when he was going someplace, put it in his pocket, on his inside pocket. In his Sermon on the Mount, Jesus tells us about the blessings. And this is very interesting because I had this speech since a while, and now I heard this beautiful, beautiful song about all the blessings. And I think two are very particularly true in the life of Blessed Karl. The first one is, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. The second one is, blessed are those who are persecuted because of their righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Let me tell you about the life of Blessed Karl, his tireless search for peace, his love for God, for his family, for the church, and for all his people. Karl had a happy and carefree childhood. He had a typical education given to all the children born Archduke of Austria. Tutors, military career, and a solid education in the Catholic faith. Already very young, he's shown a reserved, pious, and very generous character. He was always trying, even with 5, 6 years old, to help the others. When he was 11 years old, he had his first communion. A person present said, "If you do not know how to pray, it is from this young boy that you can learn it." In his family, he was often a bridge between his mother, Archduchess Maria Josepha, who was a very strict Catholic, and his father, Archduke Otto, who was a free spirit and lived in his youth a scandalous life. So you can imagine, you know, if you see the family of now, you have so many different parents. And you can take one side or the other side, you can blame one, the other. But no, Blessed Karl loved both of them and didn't really judge them. And this is one of his great quality. He never judged nobody. Why? Because he saw the face of Jesus everywhere. In his 20s, Archduke Karl met Princess Zita Bonaparte. In fact, they met before when they were young children. And my grandmother told me that when she was young, she was with her sister, and there was this young boy playing outside, and she thought he was not good. He played much too loudly, not at all like a prince should play, an archduke should play. He was making too much noise. But then after that, I think she changed her mind. They got engaged in June 1911. Karl and Zita decided to dedicate their engagement to Jesus and the Holy Mother of God. Karl ordered the wedding rings to be engraved with the invocation to the Blessed Virgin Mary. It was the first letter of this little prayer. Sub tuum presidium confugimo sancta Dei Genetrix. Under your protection we take refuge, Holy Mother of God. The wedding was planned, as you all know, to be in October 21st, 1911. Together they promised to center the Sacred Heart of Jesus in their love. On the morning of their wedding, Archduke Karl said to his future wife, Princess Zita, "And now we must help each other to reach heaven." This is a phrase probably that a lot of you know. And in fact, if you think about that phrase, it's the fundament of a good marriage. It's with that a good marriage can be successful. So the direction of their married life was fixed, even if they didn't know what form their responsibility as a couple would take. Karl was 24 years old and Zita only 19. But those words would take on their full meaning during their short married life, in moments of joy as much as in moments of trial. After the wedding ceremony, the young couple began the honeymoon, And my grandmother talked to me about the honeymoon. She loved it. They visited the whole empire, and she was absolutely delighted. She said she had such a good time together, and they were so close together. They started with a visit to the beautiful Basilica of Maria Zell, with the famous lime tree wood statue of the Virgin Mary, known as Magna Mater Austria, Magna Domina Hungarorum, Mater Gentium Slavorum, the mother who protected everybody in the empire. There they prayed and put themselves under her protection. Karl and Zita had everything to be happy. The two young people shared the same faith, the same simple taste, the same love for family life, and the same humor. That I know from my grandmother and mostly also from my uncles and my father. They all had a very good humor. On November 20, 1912, the whole family was jubilant. Young Zita gave birth to a boy called Otto. He was the father of here Archduchess Sophia, a grandfather who is here, and I'm so happy to have her here, and also Archduke Paul, who are the next generation, so I can rest after that, because you will take over. So after Otto, there were some other children. They followed Adelheid, Robert, Felix, Karl Ludwig, Rudolf, that was my father, Charlotte, and at the end, Elizabeth, who sadly never knew her father because she was born exactly 1 month after the death of her father. With joy, they welcomed each child in their midst, living together a simple and warm life. The parents raised their children themselves, praying with them, reading and learning with them. Zita only took a governess when Karl became an emperor, so she really liked to be close to her children. Then struck the tragedy of Sarajevo. Archduke Franz Ferdinand was the eldest son of Archduke Karl Ludwig, in fact the brother of Franz Joseph, and was the uncle of Blessed Karl. He had a very difficult character, very intelligent, but very stubborn. But that runs in our family. His relation with Franz Joseph was tense. On the other side, Karl had a very good connection with the emperor, as well as with his uncle, Archduke Franz Ferdinand. His presence was a peaceful link. There you see again the peace that he liked to do around him. On June 28, 1914, the terrible news of the assassination of Crown Prince Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie reached the news reached the young couple. And Zita said in her diary, "We felt so perfectly peaceful, so secure, and suddenly our security vanished. Fate struck us. We were devastated by this succession of events. A frightful responsibility lay before us at a time when the whole Europe was staggering on its foundation." My grandmother told me about exactly that time. She said it was a beautiful day, and at the end of June, and they had a lunch. There was my grandfather, my grandmother, and the young brother, Max, of my grandfather. They were all three having lunch, and then they had a coffee outside because so beautiful under a tree. And she saw somebody coming with a letter, running. And the letter was for Archduke Karl at that time. And so he opened the letter, and she told me that his face became completely white, and he started to tremble. And then he gave without a word the letter to my grandmother, and she read there was an assassination, and Franz Ferdinand and his wife both died. And so Blessed Karl immediately understood the consequence of this catastrophe. A month later, Europe was mobilized. Europe was divided. Europe killed itself. Archduke Karl, now Crown Prince, had to leave for the front. He said to his wife, "I am leaving with a heavy heart because when this war is over, whatever the course of event, the Austria-Hungarian that I know and that I love will no longer exist." So he knew what will happen. My grandmother told me also at that time, when Blessed Karl was on the front, Emperor Franz Joseph asked her to come over to Schönbrunn because he said they would be more in security there with the children. And she said she had the most wonderful time with Emperor Franz Joseph. He was the best of the men. He loved the children. He was working like mad. He was a workaholic. But when he took time with her, with her children, and was very, very interesting and a loving person. Blessed Karl and his wife realized the heavy task and responsibility that was befallen on them. Now settled in Vienna, they started each day with prayers and the Mass. After that, Blessed Karl wrote a report for the emperor who wanted thereby to prepare him to succeed him. But Karl felt a much greater happiness in spending the evening with Zita and his children. 2 years after, on November 1916, Emperor Franz Joseph died. Blessed Karl and his wife were very sad, not only for the loss of their beloved granduncle, but also for an uncertain and heavy future. Karl at that time was 29 and Zita 24. Can you imagine at that age to become emperor? They followed the coach of the late emperor with little Otto to show that they were a united family, thus upsetting the dynastical ceremonial, because nobody, only the most important could follow the coach, and they said, no, we want our child with us. When Blessed Karl became emperor, the first announcement he made was to promise that he would try as soon as possible to end the horror of the war and give peace to his people. Soon after, Karl and Zita traveled to Hungary. That was after Christmas, I think the 30th of December, for the crowning of the new king. In Budapest, Blessed Karl saw the coronation as a religious act. He said, "To be king is not to satisfy an ambition, but to sacrifice oneself for the good of the whole people." At that moment, he stood clearly his vocation. He understood his vocation in the sight of God. He would ultimately give his life to his beloved people. Karl began his life's work, peace, with redoubled determination. He did so with unwavering purpose as he made his promise at the coronation. The tragedy of the reign of Blessed Karl was that he needed reform to impose peace, but he needed peace to impose reform. The problem was proving unsolvable. The quest for peace was a question of conscience for him, and the key to all his decisions. The war disgusted him. He said, "I pray God that he gives us peace and that he saves our people from the horror of the war." Beginning December 1916, he started a series of attempts for peace. The best known is when his brothers-in-law, Prince Sixte and Prince Xavier de Bourbon-Parme, played a crucial role with France and England. Sadly, at that time, the Prime Minister in France was Georges Clemenceau, and in England was David Lloyd George. Both men were disgusted by monarchy who were Catholic. They were Freemason, in fact. And so they were completely against a peace that would mean that Austria would stay an empire. And also on the other side, his ally, Germany, wanted victory through war, and especially the Emperor Wilhelm II, who was very much under the influence of his generals. So poor Blessed Karl, he had no possibility to get through to have a plan of peace. All his attempts for peace would not succeed, but he never gave up, always trying more, praying God for guidance, never losing faith in him. He would say, "I will not rest one day. Is it not about human lives?" He was the only leader answering the call for peace from Pope Benedict XV. Speaking about peace, he said, "It is about, in truth, a thing much more important than the maintenance of a throne. The security and the peace of the Church are at stake, as well as the eternal salvation of many souls in danger." From the beginning of his reign, Karl tried to improve the situation of his people. The empire was the first state to establish a ministry of social affairs. His soldier, he banned the corporal punishment for his soldier and dueling. He assigned to unexposed posts soldiers whose family had already mourned 2 deaths, or fathers of family with more than 6 children. Winter of January 1918 was terrible. After 4 years of war, the cold, the snow, and the weariness discouraged not only the soldier, but also the population, which could not take it anymore. Supplies became more and more critical. Karl feared that the revolution and the communist regime already at work in Russia would spread in Austria. This is also a reason why Blessed Karl wanted peace above all. We can ask ourselves, where did Emperor Karl find the strength to stand in the face of such an adversity, of so many failures? I can see 3. His complete faith in God, the total understanding, help, and support from his wife, Zita, his deep love for his family and for all his people. Emperor Karl worked 18 hours each day, still attending Mass in the morning and took communion. He read the Bible, recited the Rosary. He found Zita and the children at the end of the day for evening prayers, and then resumed his work and talk. Even during the war, when he was overloaded with activity, Karl found time to take care of his children. He wished for them the best possible Christian education. He made them realize that their high birth imposed on them great responsibility, and that they should live not for themselves, but for the service to their country, to society, and to humanity. This I saw with my own eyes, because all his children, my uncles and my father, were absolutely like that. They always helped everybody around them. Every charity that they had to help, they were there, and they educated us also in that way. We tried to do it. At the end of the war, Karl had suffered the treason of his minister, slander, and fights between the different nationalities in the empire. His army was in disarray. During the first communion of his elder son, Otto, Karl decided to consecrate his whole family to the Sacred Heart of Jesus, who is the only master of his life and his family. Blessed Karl did everything to obtain peace, but it was a failure. As in Munich, Berlin, Budapest, the revolution reached Vienna. His ministers were getting very scared. They all asked him to abdicate, but Emperor Karl refused. The crown is a responsibility entrusted to me by God, and I cannot relinquish it. To protect his people from the danger of communism and to secure the interior peace in his empire, Karl signed a declaration where he agreed to withdraw, never abdicate, withdraw from power without abdicating. This was done on November 11, 1918. Only eternal peace can heal the wounds of the war, he said. Then the whole family left Schönbrunn for H.I.R.H. The house was cold, without electricity, but the family survived by hunting on the property around. As a personal initiative, King of England, George V, sent Colonel Strutt to H.I.R.H. I think that King George V was very horrified because he refused when the Tsar of Russia asked him to help because the communists were having the whole family. He refused to have them in England. He was afraid that the same will happen in England and that would be the end of his monarchy. But then he found out that they were all killed by the communists. So he didn't want to do it again. And that's why he sent over the Colonel Strutt, who was an incredible help for the family. He helped them and followed Karl and his family to Switzerland and later even helped them to exile in Madeira. In his private journal, Strutt wrote, "It is impossible to imagine a man and a woman forming a couple more tenderly united and also so devoted to each other. In Switzerland, Karl lived very simply and with his beloved family. He could spend more time with his children. He did not abandon his people, especially during this time of drafting of peace treaty. He was sending messages to Paris, to London, on the future of Austria, which he refused to see attached to Germany. He saw the misery in Hungary in the clutches, first of the Red Terror on the Belakoon, and then the White Terror on the Miklos Horthy, where so many people were killed. 2 times the exiled emperor tried to return to Hungary, but both were a failure. The last defeat would lead Karl and Zita into a new exile. They were not allowed to take the children. During their trip to the Portuguese island of Madeira, Empress Zita was keeping a diary. She described being on the bridge of the ship with the emperor, leaving Gibraltar. She was telling her husband about the sadness leaving not only their country, but also Europe. Blessed Karl answered her, "If God wants to bring us back, he will. Otherwise, I leave it to his will." On the 19th of November, 1921, Karl and Zita arrived at the foot of the pier of the island. From this place, they saw, on top of the hill, of the mountain perhaps, the church of Nossa Senhora do Monte. And Karl says to his wife, "Look up there at this church. It looks like our church in Tyrol. We will go and see her." Often they will go to this church to pray in front of the Blessed Sacrament and recite the Rosary. They had no news of their children. The couple lived this exile a bit like a spiritual retreat. One day, while they were walking, Karl explained to his wife that he understood that God was asking him to offer his life. Zita was very afraid hearing those words, but she knew that she was living with a saint and had seen the radicality of the generosity of his heart. Karl had showed it so many times. As she was silent, her husband added, "And I will do it." Can you imagine my grandmother being in her 8 months with 7 children and hearing her husband saying, "I need to die for my people"? That must have been terrifying. Christmas 1921 was a very sad feast, extremely sad. They were missing their children, they were missing their parents, they were missing their country, and they had absolutely no money, but still had faith, love, and each other. On January 4th, 1922, finally, Zita got the permission to leave for Switzerland and to meet up with her children. She returned with them on February 2nd, 1922. Karl was already waiting a long time. He rushed up on the landing bridge of the ship. He took little Rudolf, my father, in his arms. Tears were running down his cheeks. He looked like an exhausted and sad man. The whole family was finally reunited. Karl was looking after the children. He took walks, especially with the 2 eldest ones, and gave them lessons in history and geography. But their situation was miserable. They lived in a damp house in the height of Funchal, and the children fell ill one after the other. On March 9, the emperor went down to Funchal to look for a present for the birthday of his son, Karl Ludwig. He came home feverish. Without money, they didn't dare to call a doctor until his condition worsened. In his last days, Blessed Karl was in agony. Zita was always next to him, praying with him. In the presence of the Holy Sacrament, Blessed Karl said, "I always strive to know the will of God and to follow it. When we know the will of God, all is well. I forgive all those who worked against me. I will continue to pray and suffer for them. I offer my life as a sacrifice for peace among people." Then he said to his wife, "I love you infinitely. In the heart of Jesus, we will meet again." His last words were, "Jesus come." He died on April 1st, 1922. He was only 34 years old. As you see, even in his most difficult time, Blessed Karl had an immense love and trust in our Lord, and this until the end of his life. The saintly death of Blessed Karl was the culmination of his spiritual path and the ultimate sacrifice for peace. May he be an example for us all. Thank you.